At 17 years old, I left home, and that's when my journey began. And when I say my journey, it's into adulthood. I left and I began with sleeping on my cousin's couch. That's when my adulthood began. And I want to talk about the pit stops and practices along life's journey and how to enjoy them. Even when I left home at 17, fearful, you know, lots of guilt, some grief, and just lots of things, I just always have moved forward. And I want to talk about sleeping on my cousin's couch, how that was a pit stop. I want to talk about the pit stops and practices along life journeys, because when I look back over my life, if I were to think of like, okay, I try to use practical ways to share and teach around life's journey and how to empower and inspire and educate. And this is a space of inspiration for young ladies in their 20s. When you're in your 20s, you're going to be making some decisions, and many of those things are pit stops. They are not your final destination. The journey continues. The difference for some people is that the journey doesn't continue. They actually stop versus looking at a pit stop. My cousin's couch, if that was the last space that I rested my head, then I wouldn't be where I am today. And when I say that, meaning we have to continue to keep going and look at life as this is a pit stop. I went through, high school, and then I went on to 2-year technical college. That was another pit stop. I knew I wanted to be a teacher, and in order to be a teacher, I had to go to 4-year university. So again, understanding these are pit stops, these are not the final destination. So pit stops and practices, I believe, are so key. Looking at our life, understanding this is a pit stop that's leading me towards where I want to go. The practices are the things that we do every single day. Whether it's the journaling, the affirmations, the positive self-talk, the working out, the eating healthy. How are we practicing for life? I truly believe these principles is how we find joy in who we are, how we find joy in our circumstance, how we find joy in life. And joy is a presence. It's a gift to us that we have within us. In joy, E-N, joy. Joy is not a jumping around. It's not an upside down smiley face, which is my favorite emoji, but it is, and sometimes it feels that way, but it's a peace that passes all understanding. It is understanding that this is a pit stop along my journey. This is not my final stop. This is not my destination. And how can I practice? Because when we're practicing, we're building those muscles that allow us to continue to move forward when times hit hard, when hard times hit, or when unexpected circumstances happen, or when we lose people we love, or when something happens in our life that's very tragic. Because things happen that are just not going to be, they're unforeseen circumstances that's unique to our journey that helps us grow. I really just want to speak from a very practical space, because really when we look at life as what it is, which is a very unique experience, I believe it makes it not easier, but it makes it more doable, more manageable, less stressful, less hurtful. Doesn't mean the pain doesn't exist. I believe in the pain. I believe the pain is what gives us the purpose. It helps us grow. We have to experience the pain. But when we look at life as pit stops and practices, then we understand this is leading me towards something else special. This is leading me towards my goal, however you want to use it. I'm just trying to give some tools and mindset shifts around it, because in my 20s, everything was like a big bowl of spaghetti all over the place. You just felt like, you're moving through and you're grabbing as you go and you're growing. I promise you are. You're moving through and you're going, but you're growing. That's my thing. Grow. Go into the growing. Go. Sometimes you just have to go. I know it may sound like, no, go. Because you can't, if we stay at the yellow light, if we stop at red, then where else do we go? We have nowhere to go. We're not going anywhere. We're stuck. And life is not about being stuck. There was a recent quote, or someone said recently, I loved it. It said, if you're bored, then that means you're not living in your purpose. And I love that. And in your 20s, I don't really like to use the word purpose, because sometimes you're not necessarily in your purpose in the context of what you haven't figured out what your purpose is. You haven't figured out what your gift is to this world. But I can promise you this, in your 20s, you can gift yourself every day some disciplines, some practices that when you have this, or when you do discover, or when you find your gifts, or whatever word we want to use, purpose, career, service to others, when you figure that out, you won't be scrambling trying to put pieces together. It'll flow right out of your soul because you've been practicing, you've been doing things that enriches your soul. You know, this thing is really about soul support. It's about understanding of who we are. It's about a sanctuary within us that's nurtured through who we are as beings. My background is very spiritual, very religious, very God-fearing. I am a person that I love scripture. I love quotes. I love poetry. I love anything that's real that I can sink my teeth in and help me grow, you know, and whatever that is for you, whether you choose books, you know, podcasts, I believe it's I would say a toolbox of many things. I think for me, I had to learn that reading is important. I didn't read growing up, not because I couldn't. I could read very well. Actually, I did well in English. I didn't like to, you know, it was given to me and forced down my throat to read this every day. And so not from an educational space. I believe, as Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful tool in which we have to change the world. And personal development is a self-education journey. And I think for me, that's what changed my life. When I started reading books, Frederick Douglass, it was the thinnest book I ever read, and it changed my life when I saw how he overcame his own circumstance, his outer world, by going within, you know, stealing newspapers and sticking them down his clothes just so that he can learn to read and empower himself to freedom. Asante Shakir book lifted the lid, you know, it lifted me out of my own soul and some pits and some spaces that just had me bound. And although she was a Black Panther through the freedom movement and, you know, that pro-Black and all of those things, it doesn't mean that we change who we are and go into a movement. These books empowered me to move into my own being. They empowered me to actually know that I could lift my own self out of some slavery things. And what I mean by slavery is some chains I had on my own soul, some chains I had on my mind, some habits that had me bound. That's what slavery is to me. I feel like we're all enslaved in different areas of our life, especially in our 20s, because we're practicing things that were given to us. We're believing things that were given to us. We're regurgitating things that we see or hear on social media. And while all these things are not necessarily bad, I just say examine them. Self-inquiry is so important. You know, essential questions are so important. So it's really it's an ongoing journey of practicing. So I just want to come on here and say pit stops and practices. Pit stops are the things in our life that we know are not our final destination, but the practices are the ones that move us forward and understanding when we get to our goals or when life happens, we will be well on our way. And what do I mean well on our way? Just in a space of peace, in a space of purpose, in a space of this feels good. Or even when it doesn't feel good, I know that I'll be okay. God created, never duplicated. Learning how to enjoy life through pit stops and practices is key, whether it's career, relationship, the roles that we choose. You are on a journey, and I just want you to embrace every part of it.